Over the years, Kirby has been able to copy a vast number of abilities, but given how many games the series consists of, some copy abilities are just as superfluous as the rulebook of Uno. Many are highly situational and generally speaking rather underwhelming, which makes you wonder why they were included in the first place. I'm not referring to redundant abilities being merged into more refined versions, like Freeze and Ice or Fireball and Fire, or to abilities that limit Kirby and are used for specific sections, but rather to genuinely odd concepts that in some cases never even returned. Still, there's a reason the creators continue to introduce seemingly useless abilities to this day. Light is such a case, debuting in Kirby's Adventure on the NES. With over 20 different abilities, the variety is genuinely impressive for a game of that time, and thoughtfully designed. Most of them went on to become all-time classics, and it's hard to imagine a modern Kirby game without staples like Sword, Fire or Beam. That said, not every idea stood the test of time. Light is arguably the most useless ability here. In Adventure and its respective remake, there are two brief dark hallways which can be lit to unravel secret doors. Light shows no practical utility in combat, appears virtually only twice and disappears after one single use. A few players are probably not even aware it exists in the first place, since it isn't required for progression or 100% completion. Those doors can be entered either way. Because of that, Light never appeared again and should be relegated to the focal point of a random YouTube video. It could have been made somewhat useful if the ability didn't negate itself the moment it's introduced. In the first hallway, there are no special secrets or doors to discover by illuminating the area. Even the transition door to the next room is fully visible in the dark, which could have been hidden to masquerade as a dead end, forcing the player to go back and interact with the new enemies swirling around. Since enemies respawn almost immediately when you re-enter their spawn point, it's not even possible to get soft-locked, and with some trial and error, even confused children would eventually find the hidden door by chance in the dark. There are already sections that indirectly force players to use certain abilities, so Light wouldn't have been any different, and because the second dark hallway hides a secret switch required for 100% completion, players would naturally be more attentive the next time they find themselves in such an area. Now, the reason why Light exists in the first place and why my pretentious nitpicking of the ability ultimately counts for little is its secondary purpose outside of gameplay. At the time of Adventure's release on the NES, similar platformers often featured only a handful of primary power-ups that were reused throughout the entire game. In Kirby's case, Adventure stood out with the unique selling point of incorporating over 20 individual power-ups, which sounded unbelievable for a game of such a simple nature. That number suggested Adventure would be quite varied and mechanically rich, regardless of how useful each ability was. It also helped to convey the point of how flexible Kirby is supposed to be as a playable character. Instead of relying on one skill and trying to keep it as long as possible, players were encouraged to consistently switch their power-ups to whatever situation they are facing. Light is incredibly situational and for 99% of the adventure utterly useless, but not every talent needs to have an onion-layered purpose. Copy abilities are genuinely associated with combat, whereas Light is one of the few power-ups dedicated on solving puzzles. When you enter the dark hallway and see this unique enemy floating around, you're curious if this one will grant an ability. And for every surprising instance of an enemy granting some sort of unseen skill, a child's eyes start to glow. For us seasoned Kirby man-children, we immediately recognize if an opponent holds a copy ability by now. It's like a save box before a boss arena, basically a sixth sense. But watch any blind playthrough and you will see people try to swallow every enemy they come across in hope to receive a brand new technique. On top of that, the ability has been replaced by alternative gimmicks, abilities or items, never really leaving the serious. Light in Adventure rewards curiosity and feels more like a lucky penny you find on the street. Even more purposeless is Sleep, probably Kirby's most famous useless copy ability. Since its introduction, Sleep has appeared in almost every Kirby game and always does one crucial thing: it puts Kirby into a brief slumber. In 90% of the franchise, this does nothing and waste your time, but on a few occasions Sleep had some effect, especially in more modern titles. In Forgotten Land, for example, it can be upgraded to Deep Sleep, which not only heals Kirby but also grants him a passive effect or second health bar. In Return to Dreamland or Star Allies, Sleep can be ended more quickly by charging a snore bubble, which can damage nearby enemies. But probably the most significant moment for Sleep came in Battle Royale, where the ability was turned into a genuinely enjoyable moveset. As part of a community poll in which fans could vote for a new ability to be added to Battle Royale, Kirby fans once again proved their exquisite taste and seized the opportunity to choose something actually interesting. Take note, Smash fans. Not only is the ability creative within Battle Royale's gameplay, but it also shows that the developers can craft a moveset for almost every concept. Outside of Battle Royale, they have found other inventive ways to integrate sleep more directly into gameplay. Since Return to Dreamland, certain levels have introduced challenges that place sleep trophies in sections requiring constant movement, forcing players to deal with the ability rather than benefiting from it. This gives purpose to what would otherwise be a joke ability, and redefines the role of power-ups by turning them into obstacles instead of enhancements. In other words, a power down. Metal answers a question no one ever asked. What if Stone could actually move? It's essentially a mobile version of Stone, allowing Kirby to walk, float, and perform a stomp attack, all while remaining invulnerable to most dangers in Squeak Squad. There's a downside, however. Metal is so incredibly slow that you will likely discard it as soon as the novelty wears off. Speed is crucial in most engaging platformers, regardless of the franchise, and becoming invincible at the cost of sluggishly tripling your playtime is hardly a worthwhile trade-off. There are at least some countermeasures to offset this lethargy. Metal Scroll allows Kirby to transform into a ball and roll down slopes, which ironically makes Stone even more obsolete, while the otherwise underutilized Slide gives Metal some limited viability on flat terrain. By the point the scroll can be obtained, your initial impression will already be somewhat soured, and I doubt that adding a Stone-like sliding mechanic convinced anyone to go back and replay the game with Metal. It doesn't help that Metal is, at its core, a complete fraud. Its supposed invulnerability should make it a safe option against bosses, but in practice, Metal can't properly hit them and still takes damage on contact. The only reliable way to fight bosses with it is by awkwardly stomping just beside them, at which point you might as well be a normal human being and not use it at all. Even mini-bosses can't be handled effectively, turning the ability into more of a novelty suited for self-imposed challenge runs. Using Metal is basically like people suddenly pretending to enjoy hiking. They swear it's fun. This is where the ability's true purpose comes into play. It's a pure joke. Squeak Squad is already a rather unusual Kirby game, built around some unconventional design philosophies. Certain levels feel like they last only a few seconds, the game leans heavily on its cast of characters as a main selling point, and it's one of the few Kirby titles to reference the animated series. Kirby can copy the abilities of his opponents, but those powers don't always have to be useful or suited for gameplay. Some abilities are by nature less flexible, and I appreciate that the developers embrace this by creating deliberately meme abilities, alongside more practical ones. And while it may be the most useless ability in the game, it's arguably also the sickest looking one. Instead of giving Kirby a typical ability head, it actually transforms him into the element he represents, which I've always found far more creative. Alongside Metal, Squeak Squad also reintroduced Magic as a proper copy ability with a full moveset, originally appearing in the Amazing Mirror as one-time gimmick that triggered a random effect before disappearing. The creators must have recognized the potential behind such a broad concept. As a result, Magic became one of the most entertaining abilities to use in the game, and highlights the promise and purpose behind many of those one-off abilities. Crash and Mike are among the most famous one-time abilities to appear regularly throughout the series, and they have been slightly upgraded over time with small adjustments, such as charging Crash or giving Mike multiple attacks. Even so, they aren't particularly useful, as they function more as spectacles and aren't required to clear the very easy sections in which they appear. Festival represents the culmination of this design approach, and was the first new one-time ability introduced in 14 years. In its most basic form, it's mechanically almost identical to Crash, but it presents Kirby's destructive outburst as a celebratory performance, with the animation becoming more elaborate and powerful the more players are present. The fact that abilities like these are still included in the modern Kirby era highlights the developers' playful willingness to ignore pseudo-intellectual YouTube analysis that insists every idea in a game must serve a deeper gameplay purpose. I'm not trying to make Fox Box sound good, but Crash, Mike and Festival simply look cool, are likely easy to implement and can always be reworked into fully developed abilities in the future. This is exactly what happened with Paint, which originally functioned more like a hidden Easter egg ability that weakened Heavy Lobster in Superstar. The same gimmick ability later evolved into a proper moveset in Star Allies. and ultimately turned into a playable Adeline. The same could happen to Light or any other ability deemed useless, as the developers can always throw darts at the board and pick them up later again. The only copy ability absent from this luxury might also be the most misunderstood. Copy first appeared in Superstar and allows Kirby to copy the ability of nearby enemies, which is exactly as redundant as it sounds. It's like a human gaining the superpower to breathe air or think. Well, the latter might not be a given. Copy mainly exists because of Milky Way Wishes, the final mode of the original Superstar. What makes this mode so unique is not only the ability to choose levels in any order, but also Kirby's inability to copy abilities in the usual way. When he swallows enemies, he gains nothing, until he finds copy ability trophies which allow him to equip abilities permanently, almost like upgrades in a Metroidvania. While copy is the most hidden ability in this mode, you can access its secret mini-level right from the start, obtain it and use it to copy talents you otherwise wouldn't have access yet. The best part is that it's not just viable, it can actually be more useful than other abilities on its own. Regular enemies are quickly dispatched by the copy beam, and it even proves effective against bosses. Copy can also be used to obtain a mini-boss ability before defeating it, giving you the option to create a helper immediately. Scarfy was long thought to be just a regular enemy, since Kirby cannot inhale him, but copy actually allows you to replicate their true nature. Similar to a handful of other helpers, Tag, the enemy representing the ability, has some notable differences compared to Kirby. He can charge his attack and become completely invisible while guarding. What initially seems like a straightforward, relatively uneventful helper turns out to be one of the most overpowered ones, making arena runs incredibly easy. Fundamentally speaking, copy is incredibly situational, almost never necessary and only truly helpful in a single mode. However, it elevates Milky Way Wishes by offering players an alternative approach to its core premise, one that is entirely viable without undermining the mode's original appeal. And it's for this reason that so-called useless abilities often still work. They either serve as fun gimmicks for highly specific situations, or act as playful jokes that subvert players' expectations. And if you want to see this concept taken to the extreme, go and play the hidden gem Bell in Wonderworld. You will not regret it.